In the wake of Tony's passing, the world mourned the loss of the beloved Leave It to Beaver star. While fans expressed their sorrow openly, one person who knew him best, his wife, had kept her grief private until now.
From the time I was 11 or 12, I was being told what to do. I was told on the set, I was told at home. I didn't have control of my life.
You were literally given your lines.
Yeah.
Join us as we delve into her recent revelations. But first, let's rewind to Tony's early years and understand the roots of his later struggles. Tony has used acting as a hobby and a coping mechanism since he was a high school student. Once he felt secure enough to do so, he joined the theater group and dove headfirst into shows. However, Tony did face some difficulties during his early years of fame in Hollywood. He did not always have someone around to help him out, and things were very hectic at home. His mother kept working long hours to make ends meet, even though they were having financial difficulties. Tony never wavered in his determination to turn his acting skills into a full-time job and finally find the security he always craved. Tony decided to attend the University of California, Los Angeles, despite all the odds that would have prevented him from doing so. After finishing his degree at Columbia College, he went on to Sherwood Oaks Experimental College, where he took part in a film industry workshop and received training. After Tony graduated from high school in 1963, he was dead set on making acting his profession. He went to audition after audition to refine his skills throughout his career. Early in his career, Tony made cameo roles in a handful of low-budget TV series and movies. Despite their rarity, the assignments offered pitiful wages. In the midst of Tony's endless audition process, he battled to pay rent, eat, and keep up with his obligations. Taking on odd jobs as a carpenter kept him from going bankrupt, so he was always on the go. Tony longed to be a famous actor, but he doubted that his ambition would ever materialize, despite his intense love of acting. Tony was cast as the legendary Wally Cleaver in the 1957 comedy Leave It to Beaver at the tender age of 12. At this point, Tony's luck started to change for the better. Instantly, Tony became well known all over the world due to the show's skyrocketing popularity. His younger self became famous, but his elder brother, who was only a few years his senior, became famous in mainstream culture. On the other side, the many pressures and demands of immense fame had a significant impact on young Tony. Acting as Wally gave Tony a sense of stability in his finances that he had never had before. But this part also cut into his youth. Tony couldn't handle the long hours and continual scrutiny from the public. After the show's 6 very successful seasons ended in 1963, Tony struggled to reawaken his passion for acting. Tony had to separate himself from his perception of Wally Cleaver in order to be successful in his job hunt, since he was depicted as the 1950s stereotype brother. Even when Leave It to Beaver ended, Tony kept singing and even tried his hand at filmmaking for a few more decades. Throughout this period, he appeared in many programs, started a construction firm, and eventually found new purpose in directing television episodes. In the 1980s, Tony fulfilled a lifelong dream by returning to his iconic role as Wally in the spin-off series Still the Beaver. For Tony, this was the defining event in his career. Tony went through a lot of depression and instability as a youngster. Despite everything, it was his performances that gave his life purpose. While Tony's short-term success did dampen his spirits, he pressed on with his efforts to gain more autonomy in his present role. Tony may have achieved fame at a young age, but his impact as a beloved elder brother will live on in his family. After Tony left his legendary role as Wally Cleaver in 1963, he had a hard time finding acting roles that showcased his skills. Guest starring on My Three Sons and Dr. Kildare, yet he had no other major breakthrough in his acting career. The Kentucky Fried Movie, a sarcastic sketch comedy, was Dow's first feature film. His physical comedy talents and willingness to mock his own spotless image were on full display in this rowdy, crude film, which marked a radical shift from his earlier, more innocent comedic work. Dow was able to take on more demanding acting roles after the film's failure at the box office. Dow directed The Incredible Hulk and Remington Steele, 2 popular 1970s and 1980s television series. But acting, was Dow's lifeblood. In 1983, he made a triumphant return to his breakout role for the reunion movie Still the Beaver. The new Leave It to Beaver, a spin-off sitcom that aired from 1983 to 1989, also featured him as Wally Cleaver. When Dow returned to his role as the doting older brother, his acting chops were on full display. A few episodes of the revived series were also directed by him. Regardless of his many hobbies, Dow maintained ties to his Leave It to Beaver relatives. At events honoring the show's lasting impact, he was a regular co-star alongside Jerry Mathers. DA's long acting career was not without its ups and downs, but his commitment to performing shone through. He was one of television's most beloved older brothers until his untimely death in 2022 at the age of 77, leaving behind a complex legacy and an indelible impression. On Leave It to Beaver, Tony DA's character Wally Cleaver had a tangled and resentful relationship with the audience. Dow had a hard time escaping the constraints of typecasting when the program ended, despite the character's success and the love that many fans had for Wally. He struggled to break free of Wally Cleaver's influence. It was difficult for him to get parts that showcased his versatility as an actor, since he was always linked with the innocent all-American youngster he played. Dow felt shackled by a role he had portrayed as a teenager, and this typecasting brought him intense anger and, on occasion, despair. The public's fixation on DA's character made matters worse for his mental state. People often called him Wally, which drew attention to his troubled history that he desperately wanted to put in the past. While this accolade was certainly a reflection of the show's and his performance's success, it also seemed like a roadblock to his personal and professional development. Dow was quite open in his final years on his battles with mental illness, including suicidal ideation and despair. Coming from someone who was thought to have had it easy, his candor on these matters was revolutionary for his day. DA's openness about his struggles has helped bring attention to the reality that mental health difficulties do not discriminate. They may impact anybody, including those who seem to have it all. This has helped to reduce the stigma around mental health concerns. As a director and sculptor, Dow was able to find relief from his mental health issues and the constraints of being a typecast actor. He was able to find a voice and some notoriety outside of his Wally Cleaver persona via these pursuits. But the role was still a big part of his legacy, and Dow eventually accepted, if she didn't quite embrace, that. As Tony DA's mental health concerns became more apparent in his final years, so did his physical health problems. The many ways in which his physical condition deteriorated had far-reaching effects on his personal and professional life. DA had a history of mental health disorders, which made managing his several age-appropriate physical problems all the more challenging. Acting and directing are physically demanding professions that may lead to respiratory problems due to the long hours and intense effort necessary. His respiratory problems not only hindered his performance in certain duties, but they also diminished his quality of life by making even the most basic of tasks more difficult and unpleasant. Because of his prominent and visible position as an actor, director, and adored TV personality, Tony DA's fight with liver cancer was a major event in his life. Liver cancer is notoriously difficult to treat and control due to its aggressive nature and the advanced stage upon diagnosis. Sharing the news of DA's cancer recurrence with his followers brought attention to the unexpected and sometimes devastating path that people with the illness endure. A promising new direction in Dow's battle against cancer emerged with the decision to try immunotherapy. Liver cancer sufferers, among others, may find relief with immunotherapy, a cancer treatment that harnesses the power of the immune system to combat the illness. This kind of therapy may occasionally improve outcomes significantly, even in challenging circumstances, by enhancing the body's immune system to combat cancer cells more efficiently. Dow continued to work and pursue his interests to the best of his ability despite these health issues. In spite of his health problems, he persisted in pursuing his passion for sculpture, which provided him with a therapeutic outlet, an outlet for his creativity, and a feeling of normality. In addition to being a pleasurable pastime, sculpture helped him overcome the mental and physical suffering that came with his ailments. An advertising agency employed Tony DA's first wife, Carol Marlowe. They tied the knot in June of 1969. Tony and Carol have only one kid, Christopher. Chris came into this world in the year 1973. Tony and Carol's 11-year marriage ended in a divorce in 1980. After Tony's first marriage ended in divorce in June 1980, he wed Lauren Schulkind. Lauren, an artist, was a common link, and they had met via that. Tony and Lauren's family included a boy named Patrick as well as 3 daughters, Jennifer, Melissa, and Rebecca. Dion, Tony's brother, was still working as a celebrity photographer. Muriel, his sister-in-law and Dion's wife, was an accomplished writer and producer. An accomplished actress and writer, Polly Draper was Tony's niece. She started Nickelodeon's The Naked Brothers Band with her brothers and is famous for her work on 30-something. In his latter years, Tony maintained strong relationships with his family, wife Lauren, children, and niece Polly Draper. Being a dad, he said, was the most satisfying job he had ever had, and he was always thanking his family for everything. Tragically, he succumbed to cancer in 2022 and passed away at the age of 77, leaving behind everything that he held dear. Those closest to Tony, including his children, manager, and friends, including Lauren Schulkind, were at his side when he passed away. "He was the best dad and friend ever," said Polly Draper, my niece. "He loved his family deeply and was very emotional," his children said of him. "He was a fantastic guy." Lauren, Tony's wife, made a solemn vow after his death that she would tend to their tomato plants in his memory. "It was extremely thrilling," Carol Marlowe remarked of Tony D.A. and Melissa's 1969 marriage. Melissa added, "He always made me feel special, supported, and loved. He inspired others to feel the same way." Christopher, Tony's first married son, said that his father exemplified the perfect TV parent, since that is the type of father he was to his children. "We were young, and LA was in the 1960s. Culturally, there was a lot going on throughout that time," she said. "I genuinely loved Tony, and we clicked immediately." Lauren Schulkind, Tony's second wife, said she was his soulmate. After being married in 1980, they lived together for the next 44 years, till Tony passed away in 2022 at the age of 77. Tony and Lauren met via common acquaintances, and Lauren said in an interview that they hit it off right away. Tony was an admirable figure, she realized as she learned about his ambitions. Christopher, Tony's eldest son, has taken like his father in many respects, and the rest of his 5 children have always been very important to him. Working together on several projects over the years strengthened their friendship, and the father-son dynamic further muddied the boundaries between work and personal life for Christopher and her. Jennifer, Tony's daughter, reflected on her father's influence as a child. "I remember how Dad would stretch out on my bed at night and narrate stories to me that were specifically tailored for me. He instilled imagination and creativity in all of his children." Rebecca, Tony's daughter, recalled fond memories of their time together. "Music and art inspired me creatively. Together we would paint and read for hours while listening to our favorite tunes. I'm so grateful that those moments were spent together." Lastly, Patrick, Tony's son, expressed gratitude. "Dad taught me a lot about being a nice guy. He taught me how we all should be in the world through his love, compassion, honesty, and philosophy on life. I owe so much of who I am to my father." Tony met Lauren Schulkind, an entrepreneur and fellow Los Angeles resident, in the late 1970s. Despite his reluctance to marry after 2 very unhappy marriages, their relationship blossomed into a passionate commitment that lasted over 40 years. On June 16, 1980, in a small sunset ceremony in Los Angeles, D.A. and Schulkind were married. Those close to the couple immediately noticed how well they got along, how comfortable they were with each other, and how freely they could communicate. Schulkind stood by his side during the arduous operations and treasured the simple delights of their home days, such as laughing over shared meals or sitting silently together. As D.A.'s health deteriorated, Schulkind became increasingly involved in his medical treatment and campaigned for patient comfort. Her dedication and care remained constant, and she saw enormous value in caring for him with kindness. Dow had finally found a faithful partner after many stormy years. In 2021, He claimed to have been diagnosed with cancer, forcing him to leave public life. Shulkind stood by his side during the arduous operations, and she treasured the simple delights of their home days, sitting silently together or laughing over shared meals. Tony passed away on July 27, 2022, at the age of 77, with Lauren and other relatives in attendance. Shulkind expressed immense grief and gratitude for their time together, saying, "Although this is probably the darkest and saddest time in my life, I know he's at peace now." She has been open about her deep grief over DA's death, saying, "After more than 30 years of marriage, my world will never be the same without Tony in it." Shulkind finds comfort in the fact that Dow died knowing he was deeply loved, something he had been cruelly denied as a child star battling alone in the limelight. She and Tony discovered the long-term connection he had always desired through their devotion to each other. Shulkind plans to commemorate DA's legacy privately and publicly, either by writing a biography or by performing a musical tribute. Lauren Shulkind's marriage exemplifies real love's tenacity in the face of both happy times and tragically early loss, and she will face the future with bravery and appreciation for the decades of happiness she had with Tony. Even though she misses him so much, she is still amazed by the strength of their friendship. Breaking the silence, Lauren Shulkind, the heartbroken wife of popular actor Tony, speaks publicly for the first time in a new interview more than a year after his death. Best known for playing Wally Cleaver in the 1950s sitcom Leave It to Beaver, he died in July 2022 at the age of 77 after battling cancer. Shulkind was by his side. Shulkind, who is typically quiet, has kept a low profile in the year after her loss, but she wanted to finally acknowledge the couple's recent wedding anniversary on June 16th. Shulkind fondly remembered her first meeting with Dow in the late 1970s, noting an instant connection that led to a 30-year marriage. Despite DA's serious health issues, Shulkind stayed committed to caring for him, and she still mourns the void he left behind. Shulkind believes that by coming out, she will be able to grieve while simultaneously acknowledging DA's countless fans who are mourning her passing. Lauren Shulkind is sorrowful, but she takes comfort in her treasured memories of Tony, and on the first anniversary of his death, she bravely shares their beautiful love story with the world. What did you think about Tony and his roles? Make sure to leave a comment and let me know. Also, make sure to subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching,